Welcome to Decision Vision, a podcast series focusing on critical business decisions. Brought to you by Brady Ware & Company. Brady Ware is a regional, full-service accounting and advisory firm that helps businesses and entrepreneurs make visions a reality.
Welcome to Decision Vision, a podcast giving you, the listener, clear vision to make great decisions. In each episode, we discuss the process of decision-making on a different topic from the business owner's or executive's perspective. We aren't necessarily telling you what to do, but we can put you in a position to make an informed decision on your own and understand when you might need help along the way. My name is Mike Blake, and I'm your host for today's program. I'm a director at Brady Ware & Company, a full-service accounting firm based in Dayton, Ohio, with offices in Dayton, Columbus, Ohio, Richmond, Indiana, and Alpharetta, Georgia. Brady are sponsoring this podcast, which is being recorded in Atlanta per social distancing protocols. If you like this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast aggregator, and please consider leaving a review of the podcast as well. So this is the second of a sub-series of topics regarding how to address the coronavirus crisis from the executive decision maker's perspective. And in our last discussion, we heard from Justin and Jody Daniels, who talked about the unique challenges that we confront in terms of data security and privacy when we move en masse to a remote working environment. And today we're going to move to the issue of management and leadership itself from a remote management environment. So, full disclosure, I've been working largely from my home for the last 10 years or so. So as it turns out, I'm kind of used to this thing. This whole virus has forced me into something that I would prefer to do anyway. But one thing that I had to learn as I did this is I learned that I had not just to work differently, but you also have to manage differently and lead differently, because that physical space means something. The technology that has evolved over the last 25 years that enables us to work well remotely is a blink of an eye in comparison to the evolution of humanity that makes us want to be together in the same cave, in the same herd, in the same hunting group, in the same tribe, that makes us work together, build together, and grow together. And if you are somebody who is suddenly thrust into the necessity to manage teams remotely, maybe you've even been opposed to them. Maybe you've been a person that really has believed in FaceTime, and you're a person that really thrives on, that needs, that craves that personal connection. You know, with all of the all that's been written to tell employees how they can transport their jobs home, I don't think enough attention is given to the managers and leaders that suddenly have to figure out how to lead when they can't even, in many cases, see the faces of the people that they're leading and don't have the same nature of contact. So I think this is a very interesting topic. We're going to get into the weeds here, and I hope that if you're in the position of being a manager or leader that is thrust into this unprecedented scenario, that this topic is going to be helpful. So joining us today is a great expert on this topic. Bruce Tulgan is CEO of RainmakerThinking, a research, training, and consulting firm in New Haven, Connecticut, and Rainmaker Learning, an online training resource. He is internationally recognized as one of the foremost experts on leadership and performance management in the workplace. Bruce is the author or co-author of 20 books, including his best-selling It's Okay to Be the Boss, the classic Managing Generation X, that's me, his popular Not Everyone Gets a Trophy, How to Manage the Millennials, and the 27 Challenges Managers Face, Step-by-Step Solutions to Nearly All of Your Management Problems. His newest book, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work, is due for release in the summer of 2020 from Harvard Business Review Press. Bruce's work has been the subject of thousands of news stories around the world, and he has written for the New York Times, USA Today, Training Magazine, HR Magazine, and the Harvard Business Review. Bruce also lectures regularly at the Yale School of Management and other business schools. Bruce holds a 6th-degree black belt, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, in Uechi Ryu Karate.
Yeah, you can just say karate.
Okay. Making him a master in that style. Interesting enough, his wife, Debbie Applegate, won the 2007 Pulitzer Prize for her book, The Most Famous Man in America, about the 19th century minister, Henry Ward Beecher. Bruce, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Wow, thanks so much for having me. That's quite an introduction. Thanks for mentioning my wife's book.
Well, I am I have some books in me that I need to get out, and I'm so admiring of people who have managed to do that. And I think a lot of that is ruthless time management. And we've actually had somebody come on the podcast, B. Ray, talks about, should I write a book? How do you do it, et cetera. So I won't pepper you with questions that are off topic about that. But I must express that the fact you've been able to create so much thoughtful content, well done to you, sir.
Well, I'm doing my best. If anyone who wants to write a book, I always recommend, our agent has a great book called Thinking Like Your Editor. Her name is Susan Rabiner. That's a book worth reading.
And I am going to make a quick note of that, so everybody on the podcast world can just wait for a second. I don't write that quickly. There we go. So before we get started, I'm curious. You've created so much content. You have a book that is it coming out later this year? Yeah,
it's coming out
late this summer.
It's coming out in July. If there's still a world.
Oh, there'll still be a world. Whether anybody reads it or not, we'll see. But there'll be a world for sure. But my question is, what do you think the next book after that will be?
Well, I'm not sure. The book that's coming out in July, it's called The Art of Being Indispensable at Work, and it's about how to handle the incredible pressure that everybody's been under. Everyone's been so overcommitted, scrambling and trying to manage relationships up, down, sideways, and diagonal. That's what the book is about. And what we're always doing research on the front lines of the workplace, and we're always trying to figure out, what can we glean from the research that could be a value add for folks. So I'm not sure what will come next.
Okay.
Maybe how to manage remotely.
Maybe I have a feeling that book would do very well.
Yeah.
So we're all sort of sailing along, and all of a sudden we have run into a hurricane that nobody really, I guess some people saw it coming, but most of us sort of person on the street really didn't see coming. I don't think we saw it getting to this point. How do managers themselves ground, right? Because if you're freaking out, if you're losing it, it's really hard to lead others and be a source of stability and safety unless you yourself ground, right? So how do you do that when you feel yourself like you just want to throw your hands up and run in a circle screaming?
Yeah, I think that's very true, what you're saying. I always say to people, the first person you have to manage every day is yourself. And sometimes when we're doing leadership seminars, it takes a little while for somebody in the room to have the guts to say what you just said, because that's the sort of acknowledgement of the human element. People are feeling so out of control right now. When you're operating in an environment of uncertainty, it's really a feeling of a lack of control. And so what I always say to folks is, remember, if you focus on what you can't control, then you render yourself powerless by definition. So the first thing you have to do is focus on what you can control, and that's you, and try to help your people stay focused on what they can control, and that's them. But I think the most important thing is to be authentic, and don't pretend. It's natural to be worried right now. It's natural to be uncertain. It's natural that people are feeling out of control. And I think, but it's also the case that somebody's got to be in charge. In this case, that's you. And people need you now more than ever.
Yeah. And there's no playbook for this, right? There's practically nobody alive who remembers the influenza outbreak of 1918, right? And certainly nobody in a decision-making capacity. And, I want to ask you about, 2008 and even back to 2000 with the first .com crash. What are the parallels with then and now? And then what's also different?
Yeah, I mean, the parallels, of course, are that people are genuinely worried about their livelihoods. If you remember the 90s, as you and I do,
Yep.
maybe not everyone listening, some people are in the third grade or whatever.
They've read about it.
Right. But back in the 90s, it was peace and prosperity, magical business models, right? A foosball table in every teaming space, remember? And then all of a sudden,
Class A office space in Manhattan. That's what I remember.
Right. And then, everything's going to be great. And then, nope, boom, all over. Never mind. Crash. Everything's terrible. And then quite literally crash because, 9/11 followed right on that. And so for a long time, I think 9/11 is a better parallel just than the economic crash because people were so scared. An economic crash is frightening. It has a huge effect on people. Some people, they live paycheck to paycheck. Many people do. They're worried about feeding their families. What am I going to do? And so not to minimize the concerns about economic frailty, but I think, after 9/11, people thought, well, gee, are terrorist attacks going to happen all over the place now? Yeah. And remember, the anthrax scare happened shortly after that.
Yeah.
And so when people are genuinely afraid for their safety and the safety of their loved ones, I think, it's more like a war, but it's like a neutron bomb, right? Because it's just poison. And so 2008, 9, 10, it seemed like, gee, maybe we're heading for another depression. But of course, it turned out that the economic system was more resilient with the help of a government bailout. And of course, now the government has all of a sudden found a couple $1 trillion that didn't, drop. Oh, there it is. Oh yeah, here we go. No problem. Here's a couple $1 trillion. But the problem now is that it's not just financial. I don't think anyone's ever seen anything like this. I don't know what to do. And so what I'm doing is every single day I'm thinking, okay, how can I make myself stronger? How can I make my mind stronger? How can I make my body stronger? How can I make my spirit stronger? And then what can I do to add value for someone else? And first and foremost, what can I do to add value for my family? Second, what can I do to add value for my team, the people who are part of my business, who rely on me? And then what can I do to add value for my clients who rely on me for advice? And, every day, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to focus on what I can control. And I'm trying to help my team focus on what they can control. And that's the advice I'm giving to my clients, is what is not going to change your mission and your values, and what can you control today? You set yourself up for success and set your people up for success. And I don't know what else we can do.
I think you're right. I think that the 01, September 11th is actually a more apt analogy because there's an ambient fear, there's an environment around that is not just economic, and at least there for a week, everything sort of shut down, right? And we had to, everything was outside of our comfort zone. It wasn't just being unemployed. It was everything. How do you keep yourself safe, right? And now we're outside of our comfort zone because we're probably having to take care of ourselves medically in a way that we might not necessarily do. And in my case, I have a 9-year-old, so we have to learn how to homeschool on the fly. And his teachers need to learn how to home teach on the fly. And I have team members that have homeschooling obligations now, and trying to balance that. And you're right. I think there is that difference. And at least one way I respond to it is I try to keep a wave of empathy up as much as I can. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I'm curious if you agree with that, but everybody right now is frazzled, and we're only 1 week into this in most states. If this continues through Easter or later, I'm not sure that I agree that this is going to be over by Easter. People are going to get frazzled and frayed and really stretched to their limits, and they're going to rely on us more than ever to be that rock of stability.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you used the term empathy. I think sympathy and empathy are both, I'm somebody who often tells business leaders, look, it's not your job to be somebody's pastor, their best friend, their therapist, and you're not qualified to do that. But wow, this is really bringing the human element to the fore in a way that is different. When I'm out, I was out yesterday running in the neighborhood, and it's so odd. You see people out there, they cross the street, and if they don't, then you cross the street or I cross the street. Like, you don't, and you look at them and you sort of nod and smile, and nobody takes offense. It's just sort of, yeah, wow, you're out here being a human being, and we better steer clear of each other. And it's so peculiar. But I think, I say that because I was trying to think of my own moments of empathy in the last 24 hours. And I had that gut feeling of, of course you're crossing the street, not because you don't want to be infected by me.
Or they don't want to infect you.
Right. Exactly.
So now does this environment as a manager and as a leader, particularly remotely, does that force us to kind of change our priorities, right? I think you're an advocate of something called a stop, start, and continue list, which I think is a priority set. How do you reformulate that? And now that the martini's been totally shaken.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been doing is looking at our research on organizations where uncertainty is a regular part of their day-to-day routine. So we may be facing uncertainty today in a way on a wholesale level that none of us are accustomed to. But there are a lot of people who what they do for a living is they manage uncertainty. And so the sort of pillars are, every day you say, all right, what are our anchors? What's never going to change as far as we can tell? And then what's changing right now? And how do we adapt? And the way we adapt in the moment is, what are we going to stop doing? What are we going to start doing? What are we going to continue? And it's just a very quick reset in terms of your daily execution priorities. In downtime, what organizations do and what people do who have to be accustomed to uncertainty, in downtime, what they do is they try to anticipate contingencies and prepare for them and prepare their people for them, and even scrimmage or drill on those contingencies. But what most uncertainty masters know is that they're going to run into things they didn't anticipate. So then they extrapolate from that stuff. But it's one part anticipate and prepare, and it's one part adjust in the moment. And adjust in the moment, it's like today, what are we going to stop doing today? What are we going to start doing? What do we need to continue? And how do we proceed on that?
And part of that adjustment too is it also kind of understanding part of that empathy, I guess, but also understanding that the employees are undergoing massive adjustments too. Learning how to work. Not everybody wants to work from home. Not everybody is in a great environment to do that. You may have an employee that is great at work, but then they go home and they're a young married couple with a kid in a 1-bedroom apartment, and then trying to work in that environment, right? I mean, you can imagine how emotionally and intellectually challenging that is. I think we kind of have to make leeway and allowances for that too, right?
My advice there is a blanket fort.
For you, the kid.
Well, yes. But I often joke that people until recently they want to work from home because the dog gets lonely at home, and they want to be there with the dog, or the kid, or whatever it is. They want to be able to do their laundry. Some people they're accustomed to having a routine for working at home, but what I always tell managers is, yeah, you need to manage yourself. You need to figure out what your routine is going to be. And then try to talk through with your people, hey, what's your routine going to be? And you have to be a little bit careful because, some people will be, they think it's a snow day.
Yeah.
Well, so, we're just on hold. And so you have to talk them through that. No, we've got to stay focused. We've got to get stuff done every day. And it may be very different stuff than what we've been getting done in the past. Some of it's going to continue. There may be new stuff we have to do. I'm in the business of going around to auditoriums packed full of people and speaking from a stage. I sell hot air to rooms full of people. How'd you like to be in that business, right? So, okay, we need to get really good at doing webinars, I guess. And so that's something we're going to start doing. What am I going to stop doing? Going to the airport, at least for a while. What am I going to continue doing? Interviewing people, studying the data, trying to glean insights and trying to find good ways to share those insights with our clients. So everybody, that formula is going to be different for everybody. But I think one of the common denominators that we're all grappling with is doing this in our shelter in place. And as you say, some people, their shelter in place is more amenable or less amenable to work. Look, even the reality is a lot of people in the workplace, they get interrupted all day long. A lot of people in the workplace, they don't have a moment for focused execution. Some people, they come in at 5 a.m. or they stay into the night, or they say, when I go home is the only time I get stuff done.
Right.
So whether you're in the workplace or at home, you need to set yourself up for success. That means every day you need to choose your execution priorities. It means you need to make time for structured communication. Who do I need to talk with today? It means you need to have good conversations and document those conversations. And you need to make time for focused execution, for getting stuff done. And that's true whether you're a leader, manager, supervisor, or whether you're an individual contributor. But if you're a leader, manager, supervisor, then other people are looking to you to make decisions. Other people are looking to you to help set priorities. Other people are looking to you to solve their resource needs. Other people are looking to you to problem solve. Other people are looking to you for guidance and direction and support. So, I think leadership matters, and I think it's a contact sport. And boy, it just got a lot harder because the only points of contact now are going to be through FaceTime or email or telephone. And but you've got to, as you say, empathy. You've got to put yourself in the position of the people who are counting on you, and try to ask them, hey, do you have a space where you can work? Do you have a routine? How are you going to set your hours? You got to give people some real flexibility. When are you going to do your job? How are you going to do your job? What challenges are you facing? What do you need from me?
Yeah, and I think that last point, I think resonates, because that puts you in a position of being, a resource, which in my view philosophically is the role of a leader is to be a resource. And in that vein, being a resource, and you touched upon this a little bit, but I do want to hit this. Some people are going to handle this environment better than others. Some people are going to have a really hard time simply being cooped up. Some people are going to have a hard time being cooped up with their family. Some people are going to have a hard time just simply having the background noise and a running tally saying, oh, 5 more people got infected, 1 more person died, right? And
yeah, that's so true.
It's like
that last
living in a horror movie.
Yeah, right. It's like a movie.
Except there isn't some closet that that you shouldn't open. That's the problem, right? So some people are going to handle that better than others. And when people aren't going to handle it as well, that doesn't make them bad. That just makes them human beings. Not everybody was born to serve in a nuclear submarine and be in a 2-year mission under the Arctic Circle for a while, right?
That's for sure.
But in spite of the fact that, we're not meant to be their advisors, their best friends, their pastors, their counselors, we are going to have more contact probably with our teammates than most of the outside world will. And so does that give us as leaders and as managers a special responsibility to kind of be on the lookout for signs that somebody may be weathering the storm not as well as others? And if so, is there something that we can do to inquire and offer a hand without being intrusive? Does that question make any sense to you at all?
It does. I mean, look, this is true if the person's in the cubicle next to you. You look at somebody and they look tired, or they look bad, or they look scared, or they look, and you have to walk this fine line of being human and being prepared to make accommodations for people if they need them, but also recognizing that, some stuff is none of your business and you're not qualified to deal with that. I mean, look, one of the things I say to business leaders is, sure, if you can see that somebody's struggling personally, the question you have to ask yourself is, do you have resources to make available to that person? Now, sometimes you are that person's friend. My view is, if you're somebody's boss and you're also that person's friend, that's a complication that you have to navigate.
Yep.
And so maybe what you say is, hey, after work, let's go out for a soda. Now, right now, it's after work, let me call you and we'll have sodas in our remote locations and talk over the phone or something. But somehow to try to have to recognize that it's a different role. Being your friend is a different role than being your boss, being your leader, your manager, your supervisor. And I agree with you. It's being a resource is a big part of it. Look, I mean, what a lot of managers are worried about right now is not necessarily the emotional well-being of their people. It's, well, they're at home. How do I know they're working? And that's the other side of the equation. It's like the policing part. And I always say to leaders, look, if somebody's sitting in a desk during certain hours where you can see them, that's place and time. That's actually a lazy measure of performance. That if you're a good leader, manager, supervisor, you should be drilling down anyway and helping, figuring out if people, if they know what to do, if they know how to do it, if they're producing, if they're getting stuff done at a good rate of productivity, if they have good quality, And so if you're in a remote location, you can't see the body in a chair during certain hours, maybe that's going to help you get to be a better manager. And what you need to do is try to help people use their work time to succeed. So yes, some people are going to be going stir crazy. Some people are going to be feeling scared. Some people are going to be distracted. Help them stay focused on doing one concrete thing at a time. And the good news is, you don't need to be a police. You don't need to be policing people. Helping them be effective and get stuff done and stay productive and keep adding value is healthy. It is a much more appropriate role for a manager. Sometimes the best thing you can do if somebody's going stir crazy at home, or if they're having a hard time being effective at home, is help them be more effective at home. Help them be more effective and get more done. Then they'll have something to feel good about today.
You bring up a couple of interesting points that I want to go back and hit on, because I think they're so important, and I think they're so insightful. One, I do think there is an opportunity here for all of us to become better managers. And you're right, this seeing a butt in the cubicle is not a measure of value, unless the value that you have is to be able to survey your empire, right? If that's your source of value, then I guess, yeah, I see that, right? But if you haven't been able to measure productivity already, right, then this is a great opportunity to force you. Right? Just in the old days, you and I I won't say you. I'm old enough that I remember taking typing classes in high school.
I did.
And they would give you a little piece of cardboard over the keyboard so you couldn't actually see your fingers, right? And I knew if I was typing the right thing because I saw it on the piece of paper. It was on a real typewriter, right?
Exactly.
That's the way that we have to manage now, and I think that's actually a good thing. That's going to force us to develop that muscle.
That's huge. I mean, look, I say to managers all the time when they say to me, "Oh, well, people want to work from home," or they're worried about people who want flexibility, right? Until a few weeks ago, this was, people want flexibility, and managers were worried that if they're not in a certain chair during certain hours, that they couldn't manage them. And one of the things I like to do with a group of managers is say, okay, show of hands. What's more valuable to you? Somebody who gets a whole bunch of work done very well, very fast, with good quality, and a good attitude, or somebody who's in a certain chair during certain hours, right? And nobody votes for a body in a chair during certain hours, right? Everybody votes for somebody who gets a lot of work done and at good quality. But then if you actually follow them around, they see the empty chair and they say, "Oh, where's that person? Where's that person?" So this is a chance to start managing results, to start managing concrete actions, to start zeroing in on what people are doing and how they're doing it, not more than where and when.
So, one of the keys that we've kind of touched upon here is the importance now of being intentional about your communication, because communication is no longer going to happen organically. You're not going to bump into somebody on video chat, most likely.
Right.
So you've written about and talked about in other venues, I know, about over communicating with prepositions up, down, sideways, and diagonal. What does that mean?
Well, look, the way most people communicate in the workplace is they touch base. How's everything going? Everything on track? Any problems I should know about? They interrupt each other all day long. They see each other on email. They're in meetings every once in a while. And then what happens is problems hide below the radar. And then eventually, sometimes they blow up, and then it's all hands on deck, firefighting. And then we go back to touching base, interrupting, and then seeing each other in meetings or on email. And, it's unstructured, unsubstantive communication is the rule for most people. And what we have found is that when you communicate with much greater structure and substance, things go better. So when I say up, I mean the first person you got to talk to is your boss. You got to get aligned. You got to make sure that you know what's changing today, what's staying the same. I've got too much to do, not enough time. What should I back burner? I need decisions made. I need priorities clarified. I want to show you what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. So align up. Then second is down. Anybody who reports to you for any period of time, you owe it to them to give them some time, to help them get aligned, to help them make sure they know what priorities should come first, second, and third today, and what should go on the back burner. If they need decisions made, if they need resource planning, if they need problem solving. And then sideways and diagonal. So many relationships now are outside that chain of command. It's not just your boss. It's not just the people who report to you, but it's your sideways colleagues. It's somebody you need something from, but they don't report to you. You don't report to them. You need something from them, but they don't report to you. So what I tell people is every single day you need to think about not just your schedule, not just your to-do list, but also your people list. Who do you need to talk to today? And plan the conversation. What do you need to cover in that conversation? And then give them a heads up. Nobody's at their best when they're being interrupted anyway, right? Yep. So there's so much communication that happens in the ordinary workplace. That's what I call management by interruption. We interrupt each other all day long. So you have to pull yourself out of what you're doing, try to tune into the interrupter. What you really want to do is get back to what you were doing in the first place. So a much better way is to plan and prepare your communication. So every single day, start with, okay, what's my schedule today? What do I need to get done today? And who do I need to talk with? And by the way, 9 out of 10 times, if you talk to those people, you're going to make adjustments in your schedule and your to-do list.
So another disruption that I think doesn't get talked about enough is the fact that we try to create offices that people want to be in. At least many companies do. Certainly we do at ours at Bradyware, and that's something I personally pay a lot of attention to. And they could be things as rudimentary as free Coke Zeros and snacks. They could be, high quality office chairs, ergonomic supplies, whatever it happens to be. And now those things are gone, right? And employees and team members are used to having those kind of creature comforts. Is there anything realistic that we as leaders can do or think about doing, if not to replicate those things, maybe to replace them with something else?
I'm not somebody who focuses as much on the ping pong table, the pool table. I do think what you want to do is create an environment where people have what they need, where people are comfortable, where people want to be at work, where people can make themselves, make it their own space. And people really do care about workspace. When people are at home, look, maybe we should be sending people rolls of toilet paper.
That's the new bonus program.
Yeah, right. The new bonus program. I think that what people are going to be struggling with is staying focused and effective, and knowing what to get done today, and what to back burner, and how to get their hands on the information they need, how to get their hands on the resources they need to get their work done. And as a leader, manager, supervisor, I think that's got to come first. I think if you have the resources to provide creature comforts, I think okay, that's good. What most people care about the most is being able to get their work done and avoid unnecessary problems, have the resources they need to get their work done so they can earn what they need to take care of their family. I think the second thing that people really care about is having more control over their own schedule.
Yeah.
And now I think, it's the great irony. People are going to have so much control over their own schedule that they're going to need help staying focused and productive.
This reminds me of a Simpson cartoon. I haven't watched that show in forever, but I remember one where Homer Simpson somehow is sent into space. Don't ask me how.
Sure, of course.
Perfectly plausible, right? And as would be expected, he messed up the space shuttle, and he broke some sort of ant farm experiment. And the ants start going crazy, and they start doing their whatever language it is that ants speak. And the subtitle says, as they're floating in space, the subtitle says, "Freedom, horrible, horrible freedom." It kind of reminds me of that, right? When you're all of a sudden confronted with this, you don't realize it. It is a burden to cope with that and kind of wrestle the fire hose to the ground, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the things that I've learned over the years, it's something that when people are having a hard time managing their time, a tool that we recommend using is a simple time log, which is just keeping track of your time, what your activity in your time. And you can do it as thoroughly or as you can do it very thoroughly. So every activity you start and stop, time start, activity, time stop. And, it's probably a good time to start keeping a time log so that you have a reality check. And after a couple of days, take a look and see how you're spending your time. It's a way to start to see where are you wasting time, when are you getting stuff done, what's wasting your time, what's distracting you. So if you're having a hard time with all the freedom, it's a very simple tool. Just a piece of paper and a pencil is all you need. When you wake up, write what time you wake up and just start writing down what you do. It's an incredible reality check for most people, and that's true in the best of times. And maybe during these times, it's a good way to optimize this freedom and learn a little bit about yourself and see where your strengths and weaknesses are when it comes to time management.
So I want to turn the conversation around a little bit, and we're recording a podcast on Friday that's going to talk about best practices from the employee's perspective. But I think one thing that gets overlooked is that leaders need care and feeding as well, right? As leaders, and you don't have to be a narcissist to think this way, but the feedback, the benefit that you receive from the people that you lead is what we take our cues from, that motivates us to take on the responsibility of leadership. And it's not easy. And so I guess my question is this, to those of us, maybe some of us are at the top of the food chain, so it doesn't apply, but others of us, myself included, I do have other people to whom I report, even if they are very senior people. What do leaders need in terms of care and feeding as well to make them, and how can employees kind of support leaders to make them feel empowered and effective?
Well, I guess it depends on the leader. If you happen to report to a narcissistic demagogue, then you should tell them how great they are all the time, I guess. But assuming that's not your particular burden, then my advice to people is help your boss manage you. Do what you can to create structured dialogue so that it's not all on the manager, the leader, to create that structured dialogue. Maybe suggest a time. Maybe prepare in advance. Send a note to your leader, manager, supervisor 24 or 12 or 6 hours before the conversation and say, here are some decisions I need made. Here's some problems I need help solving. Here's some resources I need some advice about how to get my hands on. Here are my competing priorities and my available time. I need help setting these priorities. Here's my project that I'm working on, and here's my preliminary plan. Could you take a look? Here is a recurring task or responsibility, and here's my standard operating procedure usually, but here's a change I think I'm going to make. I think that's one way. I think if you have a leader, manager, supervisor who has a hard time giving feedback, then you can make it clear you want that feedback. If you have a leader, manager, supervisor who wants your feedback, then be candid. And I guess, once in a while, you can inquire about their well-being and tell them how great they are.
Or not, that's fine. Yeah. But,
or not.
Yeah. And you're right. You're right. Everyone is different, but I do think that at least, for some people, you're in a leadership position because you want to lead people, and the benefit of leading people, when you have this barrier, that connection is stressed. And I think your suggestions are good ones. The employee doesn't have an obligation to do that really, necessarily. But I do think that, if the employee has a desire to make that relationship work, I think that's good advice to facilitate that. We're running out of time, but we have time for a couple more questions. And one we touched upon a little bit, but I want to circle back on and hit explicitly is there are some good things that can come out of this whole thing, right? I mean, number one, we talked about is developing different management skills and talents is a good thing that I think can and will come out of this. Can you think of any other positives from a leadership development perspective that may come out of this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, so what should happen in a management relationship is you should be engaged in regular structured dialogue with your people, whether they're sitting next to you or whether they are working from a remote location. So putting more structure and substance into your ongoing conversation, that's step one. Step two, make sure that everybody who works for you understands the broad performance standards for their basic tasks and responsibilities. This is a good time to check in on broad performance standards. And even though they may be changing, check in, make sure people understand what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be doing it. Zero in on priorities. Make sure that people understand expectations. Expectations are different from broad performance standards because broad performance standards are from now on, right? Expectations are today, tomorrow, this week. Get better at helping people make plans. Get better at helping people set goals and spell out guidelines and parameters for their goals. Get better at helping people schedule their concrete actions in time chunks. Time motion study goes way back to Frederick Taylor, but help people understand exactly how do you do that and how long does it take you to do that? And, well, gee, if it takes you 6 minutes to do that, shouldn't you be able to do that 10 times in an hour or 9 times with a 6-minute break? And okay, well, shouldn't you be able to do that 72 times in a day? Well, okay, maybe 60, giving yourself a few deep breaths. And, this is a time when you can get better at checking work in progress. It's a time when you can get better at looking at tangible results and evaluating quality. This is a time when you and your direct reports can get better at helping them monitor their own work. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that in the workplace, most managers only start keeping score for people. They only start really documenting performance once things start going wrong. Well, maybe we should get better at keeping score for people when things are going average and when things are going well. And not only that, but let's start helping people keep score for themselves. Keep better track of what you're doing and how you're doing it. Time log is one way, a checklist is another way, a plan is another way. Take note of the tangible results you're creating. And get better at managing yourself and your time. I think it's also a time when you started earlier on in the conversation talking about empathy. And so maybe this is a time where we can, maybe we need to bookmark this and remember that we're all human, and that the human element is central. And maybe it's a time where we're all going to get more tuned into the need to serve, and to add value and to take care of ourselves and take care of each other. Maybe some people are going to come out stronger. Let's hope.
So I'm gonna ask you a patently unfair question, but I think that you can handle it. And that patently unfair question is, at some point this is going to end, and we're going to return back to something. Maybe it's normal, maybe it's not. Do you think when we go back to what we looked like in terms of the workplace and organizational operation, say as of January 1st, are they going to look like the same thing, or do you think there are going to be some things that are a little different going forward?
I'm not a futurist, and I'm very tied to data. So what's the data we're seeing, and I don't project out much from the data we're seeing. I can tell you, one of my best friends is an anthropologist, and actually, did you say you're in Atlanta?
Yes.
He teaches at Agnes Scott.
Oh, okay. 2 miles from where I live. 3 miles from where I live.
And he's one of my best friends for many, many years. And he was saying, just as an anthropologist, what's the likelihood that after all this, people are going to want to go back to all of the norms? It may be that this has lasting change on people's willingness to congregate. It may be that what I don't think is that we can predict how this is going to change us. I do think we can predict we're not going to go back to the way things were. I think there are going to be big changes.
Yeah, I think that's a fair answer. So, Bruce, this is a bigger topic than we can probably fairly address in an hour, but I need to be respectful, of course, of your time. How can people contact you for more information?
RainmakerThinking.com is the best way to contact us. I'm on Twitter at Bruce Tulgan. My email address is brucet@rainmakerthinking.com. I answer a lot of emails every day. And one thing I can tell you, in terms of my values and my mission is to help leaders, managers, and supervisors provide guidance, direction, support, and coaching for their people. And that's not going to change. And I want to help leaders stay in dialogue and provide that support that people need. And my two mantras are structure and substance. Create structured dialogue with your people. And if I can help in any way, you send me an email. I promise I'll respond, and I type faster than I talk.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for today's program. I'd like to thank Bruce Tulgan of Rainmaker Institute so much for joining us and sharing his expertise with us today. We'll be exploring a new topic each week, so please tune in so that when you're faced with your next executive decision, you have clear vision when making it. If you enjoy these podcasts, please consider leaving a review with your favorite podcast aggregator. It helps people find us that we can help them. Once again, this is Mike Blake. Our sponsor is Brady Ware & Company, and this has been the Decision Vision Podcast.